Welcome along to the How You Say It podcast with myself, Graham Colger, and this week I am joined by Stuart Mitchell, a Scottish comedian, writer and event host. Stuart, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm in Edinburgh for a Glaswegian, so that's always, and I'm still feeling all right.
Well,
so.
you did say when we walked in, we are in the salubrious surroundings of the Glen Eagles townhouse today, so it's awfully posh.
It is very posh. It's got wallpaper and everything. I don't
It
know
does.
what's going on.
But it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming along. And as this is a podcast about public speaking and communication, I thought it would be a good idea to reach out to a comedian, somebody who's forged a path in comedy in Scotland, which is a fairly well-trodden path, but also a difficult one to get into. And of course, one of the things I heard you on a podcast, Some Laugh podcast, which I listened to, and one of the things that really triggered my interest was the work that you do on the commercial side of things, the writing and event hosting. So these are the kind of things that we're looking to talk about today. But first of all, I think it'd be really, really good to understand and realise what got you into Scottish comedy, or comedy in the first place.
Scottish comedy. Well, you want to start the whole psychology of it, what I've been told. So I was in banking. So I worked for the Clydesdale Bank for since 2006, and then they sent me on a marketing course.
Right.
And I noticed there was a stand-up comedy writing course in the same college, so I decided to do that, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. And I'd also just recently done a speech at my dad's 50th birthday, and it got a really good reaction. So I thought, you know what, there could be something in this in terms of stand-up comedy. So I went and done the class, done the showcase at the end of the writing class, and then the guy, Charlie Ross, who was doing the class, he said, look, I think you've got something, you should keep this up. And that's how that's a mad journey all started. But they say it's psychology. Because I lost a parent at a very young age when I was 7, and they say I wasn't really given a lot of attention or in the spotlight. So that's why I turned to stand-up comedy to get that affection and feedback. So it's very interesting how I got into it, really.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I've had a go at stand-up comedy, and it's a very, very nerve-wracking and stressful experience for myself. A very quiet experience as well when I tried it. But there is something magical about being able to stand there, telling a story or cracking a joke, and getting that instant feedback from people when they're laughing, and that must be such a it would feel like a drug almost to want to constantly get that.
Yeah, and I think when I was doing English at school, I would always stay off sick. I would be sick, make myself stay off sick when I had to do the English presentation because I was a nervous wreck. And then going into Stirling Uni and learning to present as part of my economics degree, that's where I sort of started to get a glimmer using humour in my presentations and my work life settings. And I think that's been really successful for me in a private career in terms of before I got into comedy, in terms of I've always used humour in everything I do, and that's really helped me engage with audiences. But I've spent a lot of time investing in myself in terms of I've spent time in America, I've spent time with late night comedy writers. So yeah, really spent a lot of time investing in what I do as a business. And as you say, now breaking into different diversifying. Everyone diversified during COVID. And that's what I was doing. I was working with chief executives in order to engage with their audiences during some tough times and using humour to get them on board and to really brighten them up, really.
Yeah. I mean, an interesting thing that you said there is the fact that you see it as a business. Yeah. And I think that's something that for a lot of people who watch stand-up comedy, a lot of people who enjoy going to the Edinburgh Festival and seeing the Fringe, for some people, for a lot of those performers, and for yourself as well, that's your livelihood.
Yeah.
So if you were self-employed as a mechanic or a painter decorator, you would still need to invest in your own business with materials and also learning the trade and the craft, and that's exactly what you've done. When you first started out, is that how you wanted to see it? Did you see it as an opportunity to create a career out of that?
Yeah, I think I was very disciplined when I started, so I would record every performance, which I still do. Don't always listen back to it. I don't really have the time now, but I still record it in case I pick up something that I never said previously and it got a laugh, because it's all about the hit rate with me. So yeah, when I started, I would record, I would go through my notes, I would make sure I tweaked everything, and then go back the next night and do the same 5 minutes with tweaks, and then just built up a strong 5, a strong 10, 15, 20, and really then decided to move to London and hone my craft down there, because I was always advised, look, you can be good up here but get down south and learn your trade. So I spent 18 months in London doing all the clubs, and it was like starting again. If I'm honest, I had to learn to slow down. Had to make sure that it wasn't parochial in terms of talking about Iron Brew, for example. So yes, really just invested in personally in my career from the very offset, and I progressed very quickly. So I went through the open spot circuit very quickly and got in with all the big chains. So Jongleurs was a big chain at the start. I managed to get in there fairly early. And I was getting used in one of very few Scottish acts to do paid work at the Comedy Store at that time. Everybody's doing it now, geez. So yeah, and toured went to Australia, Middle East, America. So I've got about, but now I'm more diversifying. I've got a little one, 2.5-year-old, so I don't travel as much. I very rarely even, excluding London, I don't really go down south a lot. If I can avoid it.
I mean, yeah, when you talk about going down, and Scotland has a really rich vein of Scottish comedy. You know, you've got people like Billy Connolly and now Kevin Bridges, and there's loads. And of course, that's probably helped a lot by the fact that we have, I don't know whether it's our culture that we have, where we all like to have a good laugh at the best of times. We're often portrayed as the sort of happy-go-lucky kind of characters and things like that. But we also have the Edinburgh Festival and the Fringe as well that happens every year here. So we almost feel like we own a little bit of this comedy. So it must be really difficult to have such an audience up in Scotland to then have to try and go down south. And like you've just said there, even just changing the way that you speak, changing your accent, because there'll be certain lines and gags and things like that the language that you use and the tone and the accent makes it funny. So when you try and do that down south at an audience that maybe aren't familiar with that, it must take a lot to change and have to find, and like you've just said, starting again.
Absolutely, and all the industry's based down there. So they very rarely you'll get in front of industry up here. Even at the Edinburgh Fringe, the industry are already booked who they're coming to see. So it's very difficult, and although the social media has absolutely flipped that on its head, and we can touch on that, that's where all my success, 99.9% of my bookings now come from social media. So that shows you that now in this day and age, and I'm only talking about, I think the last 3 years, particularly post-COVID, that social media is key. You can build your own career. You don't need agents. You can do everything yourself as well. I don't think my agent would be very pleased I said that, but this is really the space we've got. Now, I was just talking to someone at a social media advertising agency, and they were saying that it's all about organic growth now, and social media agencies are really struggling at the moment because all the algorithms have changed. No one really knows what's going on. So if you can be funny on social media and you can create that left turn, I'm all about the gag. So people like Kevin Bridges, it's hit a minute. People like Billy Connolly, you would be not far from a laugh, and that's for me is trimming the fat off everything and then just keeping with the true meat of the gag. And that's why I think I've been successful, and I'm in demand for corporate gigs because I tailor every performance to that audience rather than just doing your stock 20 minutes.
And it must be really difficult to be so disciplined with yourself on that front, where if you get the laughs and you know what's funny and you know that material works, it must be really easy to just stand up and, because in some cases a gig is a job for you guys. Yeah. So right, I know I could just pull 20 minutes out of this place and just run through that set and not have to worry about trying to change it or tweak it, and you can almost go into autopilot. But soon enough, the audience will probably start to pick up on that as well, I'd imagine. So having that discipline, what was it about that was there a point in your career or whilst going through this journey where you made a conscious decision to say, I'm just going to keep constantly moving forward with it?
Yeah, I think it all goes down to your upbringing. As I said, lost my mum when I was 7, and my dad just used to work his absolute socks off. He was a single parent for a long time. He had his own business in Edinburgh, actually, a Singer Sewing Machine franchise. And just watching him like every day, Monday to Saturday, we had a sort of nanny that came in and looked after us in that time. So I was always brought up with that work ethic. And then I was the first in my class to go to uni. I worked with Gordon Brown at the Treasury. I was the only student outside Oxford or Cambridge to get one of the 10 placements to work with him. So really? I've really always... And then I was diagnosed with severe dyslexia in my first year at uni as well. So I've struggled with that. But that, for me, has been a massive positive for the creative side in terms of the way my brain works. But yeah, even now, so I got up at I'm up at 5 o'clock, 5:15, and I'm doing 3 hours of writing before everyone else in the house is up. So,
Really?
So yeah, I have an extra hour at the weekend. I'm not absolutely daft, but no, and that for me, getting up at that time in the morning, going to bed before 10 o'clock at night, that's where that 3 hours in the morning is absolute gold to me in terms of what I produce.
Finding that creative space is really, really important. You often see a lot of people, and it's interesting that what you've said there is because I've fallen into that trap before where I've seen people who are maybe very successful and they portray success and they work through the night and they work late and then sometimes they're up early and I can't function like that at all. And I sometimes look at that and I think, God, to work hard, to be a hard worker, you have to be working well on after the hours. But actually, it's finding that right space to be able to sit down and become creative and put that information together. You went away to America to do a course. It's interesting about the course side of things. Would a lot of comedians look to go on these courses, or in the comedy circuit or in some circles in comedy, would that almost have a little bit of a nose turn towards it because it's a lot of these people would maybe say, I learnt naturally, you've gone and just studied at it?
Well, absolutely. And again, it goes back to my career. So in banking, for example, and in government, you would bring in consultants. You would bring in experts. So in banking, for example, you would bring in someone who dealt with credit, private finance, etc. If they were going to buy a new car, you would bring a PPE or whatever it is, PP, contract purchase agreements or whatever. So you always utilised experts. So for me, investing in a comedy mentor and coach and flying to Vegas and attending the comedy writing convention over there was a absolute... I mean, you can't really describe how beneficial it was being around a table with people that had written on the late night show for 15 years, were head writers, and coming away from that week with increased knowledge. And it was expensive to fly over. It was mostly expensive just to fly over and stay in the hotels. The actual sort of course itself wasn't that expensive, but that investment was key for me. And now I came back with the tools, and that's why I would like to think that's why I'm the longest running panelist on BBC Breaking the News, because the work ethic I put into that, plus the writing skills that come. The producer always knows if they're looking for a laugh or a gag, they cut to Stuart, and you can tell in the edit, and that's really good and really shows that investment has paid off.
What do you think were some or one, if you can pinpoint one, of the biggest lessons that you picked up on whilst you were out there working with those different comedians and getting that mentorship and coaching? For
me, the Americans are the funniest comedy writers. You watch any American sitcom, you look what they've done with The Office. Yeah. You look what they've done with Ghosts as well. Shows like that they take and they put an American spin on it. And The Simpsons, how many writers has The Simpsons got? 30 writers maybe around a table? Yeah. How many do we have up here? Maybe you're lucky if it's 2. So they really know how to write comedy. They invest in comedy. And over there, it's all about, they're looking for shows to break up the adverts.
Right,
as well.
Of course, yeah.
That's what it's all about. But these shows are top class, and the way they write and they take pride. I'm not saying we don't take pride, but we've got some great sitcoms in the UK, and we have in the past, but I think we've become complacent, and the Americans have really moved on. I think we've lost that investment over here. And even recently, Lee Mack wrote an article about how the sitcom was dying in terms of not many sitcoms have been commissioned in the UK at all. So I think that's a real trick that we're missing.
You've mentioned Breaking the News. You're the longest running or longest serving panelist on that, the Scottish BBC Radio Scotland panel comedy show. Yeah. How stressful an environment is that, being in an environment in a studio with other panelists and other comedians, knowing that you can't be quiet for too long. You've got to try and get a gag out there as quickly as possible. And then, of course, when you put a gag out, you've got to hope that it lands and becomes a funny one.
Well, now when I'm doing it, I'm buzzing because I know I've got better in my head. The percentage of the hit rate is higher. So I know that 85% of what's on that page I'm prepared for and it's going to hit. And yes, some does land. I would say if I don't mind me saying, I always remember hearing an interview with one of my heroes, Bret the Hitman Hart, the wrestler. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah.
And what he used to do was he used to wrestle with a guy, Ric Flair, who we all know. And Ric Flair would do the same moves every single night. And Bret Hart would go on tour with the wrestling and he would test new stuff. And he wouldn't do as well as Ric Flair, but he would be testing and he'd bring it all together for WrestleMania, or he would bring it all together for a big event, and boom, you get the match of your life. And with breaking the news, I'll be testing stuff before that recording. I'll be putting the effort in, and then come recording day, I'm absolutely prepped. I know what I'm going to say. And yeah, the hit rate is always very high. And what frustrates me is when people do turn up and they haven't done the prep work. And that to me really annoys me, in terms of they're almost disrespecting the show and the other comedians that are on there that are prepared. But I mean, we're talking a very few handful, and everyone's got other things on. But I think to turn up not being prepared for something like that is criminal.
I mean, preparation plays a huge part, and I think it's something particularly for really, really good speakers, good event hosts, good comedians. They make it look effortless. And for a lot of people, it might look like someone's just able to walk onto a stage and deliver a few lines and get the place rolling around on the floor. But it's very, very difficult to comprehend just how much work and practice and effort goes into that. And I suppose from the panelist point of view, it's a show that everybody's involved in. So you're almost as a team of people to try and make that show as good as possible, because if that show becomes a really good show, everybody shines in it. So it could just take one person not to put that little bit of work and effort in that could drag the other people down in there as well. From a preparation point of view for a panel show, I don't want to sort of pull the curtain back too much, but you do get, not scripts, but you get sort of the information on what the topics are going to be, so it gives you time to prepare and create a few jokes around that.
It does, but I think the actual, it's not, as you say, it's not a script, it's a pointer of what's been in the news that week.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you're across the news, you should really know that anyway. So that's what it gives you in terms of, it just really confirms the stories that are going to be on the show that particular week. But bearing in mind, you get that brief 24 hours before the recording.
So that's as far back, yeah.
Yeah, so you get it 24 hours. Now, sometimes it comes through at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're recording, your call time's 12 noon the next day. So the time you actually go through the beef, write stuff, then get up the next day. But again, I don't know if many will go up at 5 in the morning, but that's why I'm always so prepped, because I always put the time in. And because of my dyslexia as well, I spend a lot of time not memorising what I'm going to say, but really reading through the pages in terms of getting that flow, getting the structure of the gag, getting the timing of the gag right, so that it lands, because you've got to really know what you're going to say, and the timing of the gag is really, really important.
It almost sounds, and again, I'm referencing back to the Some Laugh podcast that I've listened to so many different comedians, and it almost sounds like there's a formulaic process that you can go through in comedy, in a sense where I've heard people saying that you get through your first 20 open spots, and if you put the work in and you reflect, you will get better. It's almost like if you have, for every 5 really, really bad gigs, it means you're going to get 2 or 3 really, really good ones. And the more gigs that you do, the more that compounding sort of formula will keep going. And eventually you'll be honing your material so good, learning so much, and being able to develop. You will become a good performer in that sense. And then obviously you talk about the hit rate, and it's like you're able to put it down into percentages to say that 85%. Is that how you look at it when you're going into comedy, as this formulaic process that you can do? If you tick, do all these things right, then ergo you've got a much better chance. Yeah,
for me that is not every comedian. So I hate this phrase old school, because it's all original material, but I'm someone it's jokes. I tell jokes. It's original jokes that I write topical jokes for the show, and others may get away with not doing that, and that's their style, and they perform their comedy in terms of maybe they're better at performing than writing, and I'm the opposite. I would say I'm better at writing than performing. So it's all about the left turn, the element of surprise. That's all comedy is. It's taking someone down a path and taking a left or a right turn they're not expecting. And that's all it is. And you can look at a page. I can look at a page and I'll know that's going to work.
Yeah.
That's going to work 100%. That tag's going to work. That callback's going to work. And you just get a lot better at that. But sometimes what I'm better at now is, for instance, I had probably my worst death I've ever had at a corporate 3 weeks ago in front of 1,000 people at the Doubletree in Glasgow. And literally for 20 minutes, 1,000 people looked at me. And I think that's because you then realise that material is bulletproof, but the circumstances of the room just weren't there. And that's where you learn just to get through, and you know that it's nothing to do with your abilities. It's just the fact that the environment is not great.
I remember doing a comedy course actually with Joe Sutherland in Edinburgh, and it's an interesting one because we talk about the audience and understanding and knowing who your audience is. We'll talk in a little while about, you've mentioned already about tailoring material and your writing and even for the corporate stuff you're doing. But there was also an element of with the comedy, what Joe was saying was sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't work, and you've got to become thick-skinned. And sometimes you can walk out of there going, look, I've used that material 3 other times, and all 3 times it's absolutely landed and everybody found it funny. I tried it in that place, it didn't work. So what, move on and just carry on. So where's the fine balance then between knowing that maybe that audience didn't appreciate it but another audience will? How in comedy do you think about it, or do you just know, right, this is good material, I'm just going to crack in?
You normally know within 2 things. You normally know when you walk into a room if it's going to be tough. So if the lighting's really bad, if there's no stage, if the mic's terrible, if the audience there's a massive dance floor between you and the audience, for example, all these things don't work. You need the audience to be a real unit. You need them to be really brought together as a single unit. So that's always tough. Stags and hens, and if they've had too much alcohol, and these are all contributing factors of how the gig is going to go. But if you go in there and the sound is amazing, the lighting's amazing, etc., normally everything will go the way it should do.
How quickly do you want to put your audience at ease by making them laugh when you come on a stage?
Oh, I'll say my opening gag within the first 3 seconds.
Really?
I mean, as soon as you walk on stage, you say your opening gag to reassure them that you're funny. And you know straight away as well, within the opening 30 seconds, you know how the gig's going to go. So you'll be thinking in your mind, right, do I drop that bit of material and bring this other bit in? And you'll roughly know, you'll have your bankers in your back pocket as well if things are dipping. So there's loads of things you can bring into the mix. Then you can maybe decide that you're going to talk to someone in the audience. If there's someone who's heckling, do you address it or do you leave it? Do you intervene? If someone's getting served a pizza in the front row, do you mention it or just let it go? So there's all these things going through your mind in terms of do's and don'ts.
When you work with people on a commercial front, so you're doing a lot of writing for, as you've mentioned, maybe you do writing for other comedians, but you also do writing for corporate people to try and create an engagement through humour.
Yeah.
What are the sort of top concerns people sometimes have when they're saying about, I want to try and create something, but I need to make it funny? You often hear about people saying, oh, what happens if no one laughs? What happens if I forget what I'm going to say? What happens if someone heckles me? What are the common themes that people sometimes come to you with and concerns? And how do you break those down for those people then?
Yeah, so there'll be people, for instance, any event. So let's take it. If I'm hosting an event, you'll have a president that will talk, or you'll have a CEO that will talk, or you'll have a head of whatever that will talk. And normally 80% of the time they'll die in their arse in terms of nobody's interested. They're constantly telling people to be quiet. Someone's on a second mic going shh, shh, shh. Yeah. So what we try and do in that situation is we reassure the individual that they need to be engaging. You need to address the room. You need an opening line to bring these people on board. Now, if you're CEO, there was a guy at the bank that I worked with, and he was head of marketing, and he was funny, and everybody loved him, and everybody liked him, even though he was absolutely murder at his job. and he was terrible at his job. He'd never reply emails, but he was funny, and he done really well, and he get engagement with the audience. And with CEOs, for example, so there's two aspects of it. There's writing for other comedians and celebrities, which is one aspect, and that's all fine. And people will say, "Oh, do you know watch?" Or you used to watch Mock the Week and see somebody do your joke, and you'd feel a bit, "Oh, that's my joke," and you'd say no, because you've been hired.
Yeah.
It's like it's delivering whatever service you deliver, and you don't get. Do you know what I mean? If you build a conservatory for someone, get bitter because that looks good and I don't get to take it with me. So once they've paid the fee, that's theirs. And then on the flip side with the CEOs, as I was saying, all you do is we take what they're going to say and we add a few left turns. It's simple.
Yeah.
You basically address in the room what everybody's thinking. So one of the examples I give was the End of Life charity that had VAR equipment so that individuals could put this equipment on their head, and in hospices they could feel the water in their feet in the sand, and they would take them into a room. The hospice patients would put their feet in a bucket of water or whatever. They'd put a VAR set on and it would play music.
So just like a virtual reality set?
As if they were on a beach, and it was very relaxing. But a lot of the staff were annoyed recently because the directors of that charity weren't in the office on a Friday. They were all working from home, apparently. So I went up and said, that VAR equipment is great that you've got. You put it in your head and you get to see the directors in the office on a Friday. And it's those sort of things that build a real connection with your audiences, because I think CEOs, they sort of forget that sometimes being a bit self-deprecating and letting people in.
Yeah.
I'm not saying share everything. You've got to have a bit of authority and if you're leading a company, but sometimes when you let people in, it just shows that you're human.
Yeah, yeah.
And then instantly that connection you build. So if you go up and you say an opening line, either self-deprecating towards yourself, or you address the environment, the room you're in, or the event you're in, or what's a big thing for me is the menu. So it looks in the moment. If I know what they're eating before he goes on, and I write a gag about the lasagna or whatever, then it looks as if he's done that off the cuff, and they think, geez, we're going to listen to this guy.
Yeah.
And that, for me, the Americans are across this. The amount of CEOs in America that have got comedy coaches that work with their comms teams and their communication teams to punch up their speeches, and they go to external events. So if a CEO is speaking externally, then again, you bring someone in. Where's the hotel he's speaking at? What's the conference he's speaking at? Let's get some opening lines for him. Let's filter his presentation with a few left turns, a few gags. The best TED Talks you watch have got humour in them.
That's right, yeah.
Or else you're disengaged. How many... So I don't do it now. I used to do wedding speeches as well. And the amount of weddings I've been to where the best man speech is just bombed, and sometimes it ruins a day because that's all people talk about. And it doesn't matter if you're in your final year at uni doing a presentation, if you've just recently joined British Gas on an apprenticeship or whatever. If you can make people laugh in the room, don't be a joker, but if you can add humour to your presentations, that plants the seeds in directors' heads. He's a good guy, him. If he can make you laugh, he's going to onboard staff, he's going to engage customers and key stakeholders. People don't understand how incorporating humour into your everyday life can have huge benefits if you're not involved in the comedy industry. Just your day-to-day life, if you involve humour in your presentations and your speeches, people, I heard this phrase, it's all about the likeability factor.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so true. People say to me, I'm likeable. No, that you can't create that, it's just what you are. But you can be more likeable, you can give people that likeability factor. And it doesn't matter if a chief executive, a lot of chief executives will say to me, but I'm quite dour, I'm quite...
Aye.
And you're like, but that's good. You've got a dry sense of humour, so let's play in that. And let's... and the amount of it's funny because they're like, some CEOs are like comedians where they don't like you to say, you're not allowed to say anything that you write for them, or you, because it's almost like especially comics, they don't like that, and that's fair enough. But it's interesting. Once they've seen you, nobody really dumps me in terms of, once they see the effect that a bit of humour has in their presentations, they're almost, it's funny, they're almost wanting more and more. It's an adrenaline rush because they're getting laughs and they're not used to it.
Well, it's like what we talked about, that instant validation.
Yep.
When you see somebody laughing at something that you said, it's the impact that you can have. And I think when it comes to laughter, other than maybe the opposite end where you're maybe saying something that has a negative impact on somebody, but laughter is such a great thing. As human beings, we just love it, and we don't laugh enough as adults. It's what they say. How many times do we laugh a day as a child versus how many times? And one of the, on a completely separate topic, one of the things that I remember hearing, I can't remember what podcast it was on, and it was a guy said for men's mental health, you should spend time with your friends during the morning. We always meet up as adults in the evening. And he said that when you spend time with your friends during the morning, it just instantly takes you back to school. Because it's the only time you ever saw your friends in the morning. At 10 o'clock in the morning, what are you normally doing? You're normally working. Yeah. It's when unless you're at school or uni or anything like that. And suddenly you become a little bit giddier. I always think back to, like, if we've been away on lads' trips, or if we've been at stag do or something like that, the morning after the first night, when you're just surrounded by your friends, everything seems to be funnier. Everything seems to be great.
I'm not having Raymond Mearns at my house at 5 in the morning.
Well, I mean, I do want to talk about Raymond Mearns because he was a guest on the podcast. I think, if there was a bleep machine, it would have got a good workout that day. But Raymond's a cracker, and you two have a podcast together, the Glasgow Da podcast.
Yep.
What's that been like, and explain to us what that is then between the two of you?
Yeah, so we're very different. So I'm very structured in terms of scripted comics. I know what I'm going to say when I step on the stage. Raymond is very different in terms of how, Frankie Boyle, I think, described him as an improvisational genius or improv genius. And it's right in terms of, he is so good on stage at interacting with the audience. I've got a lot better at it since I've started hosting. I host some gigs. But there's no one better for me than creating comedy out of nothing, basically. So that's when we decided, we've been good mates for a long while. And I said to him, what about we were looking at sketches and characters, and I says, what if you were my comedy dad? What if you were my dad and I was the son, and you just abused me and you shut me down? And we put a bonnet on him and a pair of glasses, and it was basically just Raymond with a pair of glasses and a bonnet on. So that's what we do. So the Glasgow Da podcast is basically father and son, and we discuss everyday topics.
Right.
And that's how it started out. And it's been so well received. I think we're nearly up to 90,000 followers on TikTok, right? And we're doing really well on YouTube, and we're only in episode 6 of the podcast, and it's flying. So we've hit something there, and I think the chemistry between us on the podcast is really building, and it's great, and he's so knowledgeable about things, and it's going really well.
Raymond was great. He talked about the value in being himself, and I think if there was one person who probably epitomises that. Yep. He didn't change any demeanour in himself before we got started. It was over Zoom we were chatting, so he was chatting away, and I says, let's just get started, right? So we got started, and again, nothing changed. There was no change in his voice, no change in his demeanour, just the way he was, but he was funny. What about people that often say, you've mentioned about CEOs, you've mentioned about other comedians, and we talk about Raymond there, with even the contrast between Raymond and yourself. Is it fair to say that some people are just naturally funny, or is it a skill? And even it goes back to confidence, I suppose, as well, because some people will say, you're just naturally confident. You get introverts and extroverts, that's understandable. But for a lot of people, they'll just see it as, I'm not like that, right? I'm not as confident as that person there is, because that's just a natural thing that they've got. It's not a skill, they're just naturally good at it. Do you see that in comedy, or can it be taught? Can it be a skill that can be honed in and developed so that when you do become from the less confident and funny person to being the guy that can walk into a room and make everybody laugh?
Yeah, I think there's only probably a handful of comics like Raymond like Peter Kay as well, I would say, who's just naturally funny. Very, very rarely do you get people like that. I think very, very rarely do you get people like that in comedy. You do get, just because you're funny down the pub with your mates, doesn't mean you're going to be funny on stage. And you see it happening. You'll be sitting backstage at an open mic night, and somebody in the green room will be giving it all this, and then they'll go up stage and they'll bomb.
Hello.
No. But on the flip side of that, you'll get someone backstage who probably, to be fair, would be me, because I'm very socially awkward, who would sit there and say nothing, and you're thinking to yourself, he's going to die in his arse, he's terrified, and then he goes out there and he just click, instant. He just has a persona on stage that's totally different from off stage, and he blows the roof off. And that's more common than someone being really funny off stage and then going on and killing it, as they say.
When you talk about personas then, and you've said that word there, where Raymond talks about being himself, right? And only someone like Raymond Mearns can be themselves and still manage to nail it down. What about somebody who maybe needs to have a persona so that when they walk on stage, they can be the polar opposite of the person that's just been sitting there in that back room, that's been the quiet, introverted character, that suddenly it could be using a different accent, it could be putting a wig on, it could be using a prop. Suddenly they change instantly to becoming a completely different person. Do you see that quite a lot?
Yeah, so I used props to start with, but it was a safety blanket for me. It was almost like having something there. So you do see that a lot. I think for me, people that I would work with are people that are friends with me that have never saw me, and they come and see me being a comedian. They think, God almighty, you were so different. I never expected that. And I think you're sort of 200% more confident on stage than you are off stage. I wouldn't say that's probably not right in terms of what I mean is you show yourself as 200% more confident, and that comes across on stage. But I do think that there's certain individuals that we've all got a persona, but there's certain individuals that will play like a complete character on stage. Like the guy, the meet and greet guy, Troy. So he's a complete character on stage, and totally, obviously, he's not like that off stage at all. So that's what you see. Johnny Vegas, completely different off stage than he is on stage in terms of that character. So there is. I think we've all got a persona on stage. We're maybe just lift that 20, 50, 100% in terms of confidence level, energy level. So I don't think, as I said, there's very few people that will just walk on stage and they'll be the same that they are off stage, apart from Raymond.
Can you use things? I've worked with a couple of people about building their confidence up, and one of the things we said was look at somebody who portrays what you want to be and what you want to portray. You look at somebody on a stage with a microphone, and you see the way that they are, and you can say, like, look at their mannerisms and look at the way that they do things, where that prop that you need might not have to be a wig or a something. It could just literally be a microphone, a stage, and some lights, and suddenly, as soon as you walk from that, because there's been occasions where I've spoken and particularly some of the comedy that I'd tried to do, and I sometimes look back and go, it was almost like an outer body experience. When you look at that and go, that just feels so distant from the kind of person that I was before I walked onto that stage to the person I was whilst I was on it. How do you manage that, or is that something that you work with as well, in terms of even like your nerves before you walk on stage to then being on stage and just being instantly in the zone?
Yeah, it's very simple. Before you go on stage, if you're feeling nervous, you take 10 deep breaths through your nose and 10 deep breaths back through your mouth, and it calms you down absolutely completely. And also keep your shoulders back on stage, look towards the back of the room, and they're small things that can just, if you don't feel confidence inside, it makes the audience feel more confident. But you definitely see people. So there's 3 comics in my 15 years that I've saw at the start of their career, and I thought they've got it instantly. Right. You know straight away if someone's got it or not. And what I always advise has been family or friends that have obviously wanted to enter comedy, and I've always said to them, for me, it's only my personal view, I think you need to be mentally strong before you become a comedian, because I was used to failure. in terms of trying to start businesses and in banking as well. So I was used to that failure aspect and not taking failure too serious. But it can ruin people in terms of if you've maybe suffering a wee bit mentally and then you go on stage and you get a good gig one night and then you really bomb the next night, and then you maybe get to a stage whereas, for instance, one night I would be supporting Stuart Francis on his tour to 1,800 people, or Jim Smith to 2,000 people in Aberdeen, and then literally 15 minutes later you're sitting in your hotel room on your own.
Yeah.
Or you're driving back after the gig on your own with no radio on, and you're thinking, God, 15 minutes ago I just come off stage to 2,000 people at the music hall in Aberdeen. But you need, and even for me, and I would say I'm extremely mentally strong in terms of built that up. Unfortunately, other family members aren't. I seem to have missed that. But I think, yeah, what's key about it is being really strong so you can cope with that. And maybe that's why some comedians struggle with alcohol, and then you get in that vicious cycle of then you're drinking alcohol and taking things to try and make you sleep, and that's just that vicious cycle. So you really need to be mentally strong to do comedy as well. And there's been a few CEOs, well, maybe not a few, maybe 2 CEOs I've actually said to them, look, I can give you the gags, but I just don't think presenting is for you.
Really?
Why don't you just get your deputy or get your head of media or marketing, because it's making you ill.
They were just so, was that just the nerves that they
just so nervous.
Really?
Just so nervous. And clearly they'd gotten into that position through hard work and results, but no one's perfect. And for them, the 40 standing up in front of an audience was terrifying. And you could see it, and you're thinking, Christ almighty, no gags are going to get you out of this. You need to go away and decide, one, if you're going to try and address that. And that's a bigger professional than me. If it's, I don't know, sometimes it's maybe the case that they just, can you ever build someone up that's in that position, that's so low in confidence in doing one particular skill, i.e. presenting? You're maybe just better look accepting that it's no for you and getting a deputy in to do your presenting, and you do the work in the background. And sometimes, and I'm not going to take somebody's fees or money or whatever. You're better just being honest. And one of them was a wee bit funny, but the other one, the female actually, was quite honest and says, do you know what? No one else in the organisation would have the confidence or the brass neck to tell me that.
Right, so they actually appreciated your honesty.
Crapping themselves to say, I mean, you're not going to turn into the CEO and say, sit down, hen, you can't talk. Do you know what I mean?
No, there's the resilience part of that is huge, isn't it? And I think when you go into it, you have to know that there are going to be ups and downs, because a lot of people, and a piece of advice a friend of mine once gave another friend, he said, don't put your name in your business. And he said, because if you put your name in your business and your business fails, there's an automatic association with your name and the failure associated with it. And I think that's easy to do when you're coming up with a name for a business. You can call it whatever you want. If it's comedy, it's your name that's on the posters. It's your name that's outside the door. It's your name. It's you that people are coming to go and see. So if you do flop a little bit or it's not that great, that dealing with that must be very, very, very difficult.
And what really frustrates me, and it's probably because I take it so serious, if I'm hosting a corporate event or I'm at an event, for example, and they're doing an auction or they're fundraising, and then a representative for that charity will go up and thank the audience, and they're shaking and they're holding a bit of paper and they're stuttering and they're mumbling. People start to talk, get up to the toilet, and I think to myself, why, one, would you put yourself through that? And two, not just get somebody that's confident and really capable of delivering a good, engaging speech for the charity. Why put someone through that? And it's no fair in them.
No. That constant development stage, I mean, there are people who maybe think they are. I've seen that quite a lot of the time when you maybe find somebody who's spoken a lot, and one of the big things I talk to other people about is just because you speak a lot doesn't mean you're actually any good at it. And I remember I've been to 2 Toastmaster meetings, and one of the ones that really opened my eyes was they had an or a counter, or an counter they called it, and it was a lady who was in charge of it, and she had a physical button that would buzz anytime somebody who was speaking went or they used a bridging word, and it was very off-putting. And the point of the matter was, they're saying it sounds a lot harsher. I mean, after this poor guy, who I think he got like 27 S's in a 7-minute speech, and afterwards, the woman went over and gave him a hug afterwards, and they were friends. But it was harsh at the time, because it has to be. You have to be able to know when you're making these tiny little mistakes. You talk about you record yourself back so you can hear these wee things. But it's incredible how many people will stand on a stage with a microphone who've maybe had no development and not invested any time in their own communication development, because they think, I can do this, I'm confident I can speak, and they'll speak, and it's as and everything like that. When I'm a little bit pickier with that, because with what I do, I pick up on it instantly. Body language is another thing. You'll be the same. I remember Joe Sutherland in that comedy thing talked about comedians that play with the mic and they play with the cord, or when they start to walk and the cord starts to get...
Aye.
All these tiny little things can play a huge part in making the audience feel uncomfortable.
Aye. And you've seen recently in the news, they're playing with other things as well that's got them in a lot of trouble. But I think, no, you're right. It's those little ticks that the audience see. If you're constantly sort of playing with the microphone or jiggling the cable or whatever, then it's off-putting. It's off-putting for the audience. But I think where my key skill niche is, and no disrespect, I don't work with CEOs that can't present, right? I work with CEOs that are looking to have left turns in their speech to incorporate humour. So most of the CEOs I work with, like comedians, they know how to write. They know how to write a speech. What they're no good at is gags.
Making it funny.
And making it funny. And I'm a puncher-upper.
Yeah.
That's basically what I am. And corporate is comedy consultant.
There you go. I mean, how difficult is that to sell yourself? Is it a market that's out there? I mean, it's funny when you meet somebody in an industry that you never ever think about. I once, in another life, I was delivering a health and safety training course for a company in Glenrothes in Fife. And I said, "What do you guys do?" And he said, "You know the little metal frames that you put the nozzle from the pump from your petrol, for the petrol station?" He says, "We make them for the whole of Britain." And it was just like, that tiny little thing, that's what they do. And then you never even think that's a need or a requirement, of course, but it is. But then you meet somebody like yourself that's saying, yeah, I basically work with chief executives or senior ranking people to make them put a bit of gags in their thing. Is it been a difficult thing to promote yourself, put yourself out there, get that business coming in?
It is, because I think, I mean, it's a lot better now. It's been difficult because it's like the iPhone, innit? When the iPhone came out, you didn't really realise you needed it until you had it in your hand. And I think once I show them and they see the impact themselves, then that's when you start getting the repeat work. So you might just have a few clients that you work with, but it is on a repeat basis. Okay. And if you can even if you can add one every 2 to 3 months, then it's just a rolling thing. But it's part of Stuart Mitchell Incorporated in terms of that's just a string in my bow, and I've got obviously the radio and the podcast and breaking the news, and then I'm gigging myself in the circuit, and I'm hosting my own gig and bigger in the town that I stay in, and so you're doing all these different things, and then obviously in TikTok and creating content for that, and even been involved in advertising, so been asked if you can create funny ads. Like, what was the one? Dubai. Emirates were doing flights, and it was Dubai or not Dubai. That is the question. Like, I play on Dubai, and they loved it. And you're thinking, God, how much are you paying someone else for that? Do you know?
Have you ever had a situation where someone's come to you and said, "I don't need you anymore, I'm funny now"?
No, I've actually never had that.
Aye. I've
never had that. I've worked with comedians in terms of, I wouldn't like to say paid mentorships, because I wouldn't take money off people. I don't say that. There'll be loads of comics contacting me. But what I mean is, I've had comics say, "Do you know what? I sort of get it now.
Aye.
I get it now." And there's been open spots that have come through, and they're doing well now. And they've said, "I've get it. It's a formula. It's a listing process. It's a left turn element of surprise." And I think we overthink it too much. All we're looking for is a laugh. We're looking for a left turn. That's it. It's no. I say it's no hard. It is hard until you train that comedy muscle, and it gets easier like everything else.
And that's it. It comes back to that working on a skill to grow it and develop it, not just relying on just being the funny guy in the pub like I thought I was for a while. Going on to the hosting side, what makes a good host? What do you think makes a good host when it comes to hosting corporate gigs or hosting events?
Well, I think in this day and age, quite rightly, you need to be inclusive.
Yep.
So you can't piss anyone off. You need to be accessible. You can't be doing material that's inappropriate, that will be offensive. I think, and I know people will be listening to this thinking, well, that's obvious, but you want to see some after dinners. I mean, how they're still in the circuit is beyond me, but anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
But I think you need to be inclusive, you need to be non-offensive, you need to tailor your set to the organisation as well. A lot of comics will say, nah, you just do your set. Just do your set. But if you want to be really accommodating, you take, for instance, the presentation from during the day and you make light of it. You find out what everybody's views are in certain things in the organisation. If the MD's up for a bit of a laugh, then you do a bit in him. And I think for me, you need to be professional. You need to turn up in time. You need to do your time. You need to not drink alcohol before you've been on, have a wine afterwards or whatever. You have to be there early so the event hosts isn't stressing out. Do your sound check. Be smart, presentable. No moan. The amount of people that will book you and they'll say, oh, we'd another such and such the previous year and they were moaning because we were overrunning by 5 minutes, and you're like, Jesus Christ. They're paying you a great fee. You're basically theirs for the night. Do you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you definitely need to be accessible, inclusive, and just no offend anybody and do a good job, because sometimes the people in the room, you're a hindrance to their night. You're disrupting their networking.
Aye, yeah.
And you need to remember that as well. So, and they know that, the organisers know that sometimes as well, and some will come, it's went all right, but people have been talking all the way through it and there's nothing you can do with that, and they've said, look, you were great, but really apologise for the people at the back, and that's fine. You don't get cut. Don't lose. I've seen folk lost their head, and you're like, why? Just do your thing.
At what point would you engage in a situation if you're hosting, or because I mean, from a hosting's perspective, you're kind of trying to. It's not really about you. It's about bringing it all together. But if you're trying to host, and you've mentioned it already, there's sometimes nothing that makes you more uncomfortable when people start, order, best of order, please, guys, when somebody else is trying to speak. I remember at a dinner, and there was a after dinner speaker. There was a comedian actually going through his set, and a table had just completely switched off. The set was wrong for the room, if I'm being honest. I found the set very funny. It was a very niche Scottish football kind of jokey. It was making very good jokes about it. But another table, guys who had no inclination towards football whatsoever. But the guy kind of just, and it must have been a stock line that he used. He said, oh, where did you learn to whisper? A fucking helicopter, right? And it didn't land at all. But what it did do is it made everybody else feel completely uncomfortable. There was no laughter from the audience to the guy who, the speaker, which then almost made him angry. And it felt like, it basically, we have felt the rest of the evening completely uncomfortable with the situation, because it felt like he was angry at us for being a rubbish audience, which in fairness, in his eyes, we probably were. Yeah. But at the same time, he made that decision to engage instead of ignoring it, whereas if he had ignored it, would it have made the evening any worse or any better? At what stage, and when you're in that situation as a host, or how could somebody deal with that better than he did?
Yeah, so I think if you're on stage and people are chatting away at the front or whatever, and it's only you that can hear them, you just let it be. Don't get involved. If you hear sort of in the middle of the room and it's just, I always feel just like shh, like that. Just very sort of short, sharp, free shh. Yeah. That normally settles them down. And then if it's still going on, sometimes it will self-police itself, but if it doesn't, I normally address it and just say, look, the bar's open outside. Do you want to go out, just have a drink, talk with your pals, and we can enjoy the comedy?
Yeah.
And really friendly, like that way, and it works. It goes. If they turn nasty, then it just really looks bad in them.
Yeah.
I think there's no point, and then you never want to, especially at a corporate. Comedy club's a bit different, but at a corporate, you never want to go in hard, unless it's a very male-dominated audience and you feel you could get away with it, then fair enough. Especially if the guy's been a bit of a knob and the audience think he's a knob, then that'll work. But I think, first of all, if it's just a bit of chatter, ignore it. If it builds up, do the shh. And then if it's just a one table, you just sort of politely address, look, the bar's still open, why don't you go and have a drink?
I mean,
and go catch up with your pals or whatever, you know?
It's amazing how quickly that can de-escalate something that everybody would be so worried about. I remember hearing a study that was done about people that are running late for a course.
Aye.
And what they did was they deliberately sent somebody into a course 10 minutes late, and then they asked everybody who was on the course, did anyone arrive late? And everyone went, I can't really remember. And when you're standing up there on the stage or you're hosting, the one thing you're most worried about is what happens if people start to become disruptive, and maybe you're worried about having to do that or try and ask people to be quiet, or even that uncomfortable. I mean, even just now thinking about it, how uncomfortable you say, guys, look, the bar's open next door, why don't you go through there if you want to have a chat? At the time, you'll say it, and there's probably an hour, 2 hours later, most people won't have even picked up or recognised it, but in your mind, it's in, like built up and built up. And
yeah, and it's fair to say audiences have changed.
Yeah.
I would say in the past, I hate to say that for post-COVID, it's done to death, but genuinely, since we've all opened up again, audiences have changed. Their attention span is less.
yeah,
They're on their phones, they talk, sometimes they take phone calls. It's a bit different at corporate, but at comedy clubs, when they buy a ticket now at a comedy club, some people think they're entitled to act the way they want.
yeah,
It is incredible. It's incredible to witness in terms of behaviour. Now, I'm only talking the minority, but even then, it only takes a minority to disrupt a room. And it just, I mean, sometimes I don't like to get cynical, but people would say in society. And then also, because people are so stressed at their work, when they go out and they have a drink, and they drink too much. And that's what you see at corporates. You see people just letting their hair down, but too much, and just getting steaming.
Right.
And because the meal's not at 8:30, but then it's too late. So you've got to sort of learn to deal with that. And there has been times where you've sort of had a chat with somebody in the room to say, look, that guy in table 2 is absolutely at his face. Somebody's going to just want to go up and take him out the room, but in a nice manner. And you always need to be on the ball to notice these sort of things.
So when you're sitting there at this corporate gig, maybe you're the speaker, maybe you're the event host or the MC for the evening, and you're sat at the top table perhaps, or you're at the table at the side and there's a stage with a lectern, etc., or prize giving, or award ceremony, whatever it is. Are you constantly just on the lookout, eyes always on the go to find out what's going on, and even pick up on anything that you could use?
Absolutely.
Or also avoid as well?
Aye, once I'm booked sort of a week, if I'm booked for a corporate on a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday, that week is booked out for that corporate. So like the Monday or the Tuesday, I'll be doing writing for the corporate and things like that. But when you walk in the room, you're always eyeballing everyone to see, right, what's the situation here, what's the ratio of male to female, or vice versa, and etc. So you're always on it. What's the lighting like? What's these stupid things? What do they look like they've got on the table or whatever? Like, just looking at everything that's around them that people are taking in. What's maybe happened that night? Is something happened where, I don't know, the fire alarms went off, or one of the bulbs blew, or just silly wee things that you can address on the night. So you're always sort of on it.
What you're talking about there is blocking your week out. I think one of the things that a lot of people forget when they see prices and they get a price for a gig or somebody coming in, and they see it as the night or the day or the event. What they don't see is the work that goes in behind that. You know, so how much of that do you incorporate in when you're pricing? Are you saying, is it a 50-50 split? Are you saying, right, well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be 4 hours or 3 hours on a Saturday night, But for that 3 hours, I'm going to have to do another 6 hours of writing and material and preparation. So that's it. That's the sort of price incorporation there.
Yeah, and it's all a briefing call as well. So you'll have a briefing call with the client. But I'm very different in terms of I use a briefing call and I don't know what others do. A lot of people will, fair enough, they'll just do their set, they'll do their 20 minutes. It doesn't matter if you're in a comedy club or a corporate, you get their 20 minutes. Whereas I really sit and tailor the material, if the client wants that, to the day and to the companies and who's in the room, what companies are in the room, etc. So that's where, when you get me, you get that whole package.
Fantastic. You've also got a BBC Radio 4 show coming out, Stuart Mitchell, Cost of Living. What can we look forward to with that then?
Yeah, so that's out, when's that? God, Sunday the 25th, so a weekend Sunday, not long.
Yeah, that's when it
so
goes,
that's my life story from, I guess, so I had a lot of tragedy in my life, which obviously tragedy makes the best humour. So it's an autobiography of my whole life story. So it's about losing my mum when I was 7 and then being grown up with single parent, my dad and his Singer sewing machine shop, and then moving first in my family to go to uni and go on to the treasury and go into banking and giving the banking up because I thought it was unethical, and moving into the charity sector and comedy. And so it's a whole journey of my whole life across 6 episodes. So yeah, I pitched that way back about a year ago, and then it got commissioned. One of the first, it was the first BBC Scotland production to get commissioned for Radio 4 for many years. So they were really pleased, and and the team behind Breaking the News as well. So they've been great. So it's amazing to have been working with them.
So what goes into that show? Is this you writing the show? Well, I mean, it's your life, so you'll know it. But I mean, to write it, and then is it just you, or are there characters that are coming in?
So it's me that's written and performed the show. In terms of I don't play characters, but I act out my father and things in the show. But again, that was all, I wrote that in 2 weeks. So the 6th part, I took 2 weeks and put the show together. And then I road tested it during the Edinburgh Fringe.
Right.
So what was that, 26 nights in Edinburgh, I road tested it every night, which was difficult because some of it never worked. At the start, but then by the end of Edinburgh I had a show that I knew worked, and then I recorded it in front of a live audience, and I did my American thing as well. I made sure that BBC agreed that I'd done 2 recordings, so I'd done 2 the same recordings and took the best bits of both nights.
Really?
Yeah, which was and I wasn't an arse about it. I just, that was the stipulations about doing my show. I wanted 2 recordings of the exact same material and take the best bits of both nights.
Fantastic. And I suppose, like you said, is that it might have been difficult at the time going through Edinburgh, but it's that it goes back to that process again, isn't it? It's doing it, reflecting, changing, and then trying it again, and making those different changes. And as you've said, it might have been tough, and having that resilience has brought you through, and now you have that show at the end.
Out with a new material night, going up on stage and doing something that you've not prepared for terrifies me, and it might not terrify Raymond. He's very good improvisation, but for me, I need to be prepped. There's no way I'm standing on stage for a Radio 4 show doing things that I've not tested.
Of course. Now, I maybe haven't given you the preparation here, but I do that deliberately for our guests, where I ask them what are their fundamentals of communication from the industries or background or lives that they've had. So, Stuart, what would you say key fundamentals when it comes to communicating in all the areas that you've worked in?
I think for me, it's smiling to people. Absolutely. You need to smile to someone when you meet them. A firm handshake for me as well is very important. I know you've not even spoke yet, have you?
No.
But it's a smile, it's a handshake, and it's putting someone at ease. And we all know instantly you're either going to like someone or you're not. I think so. The smiling, the handshake, and then always repeating for a second time what you've said to make sure someone understands what you're telling them or what instructions they need to take forward. I think that's really key, and always following and checking that they understand completely what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's probably in my most important communication strategies that I've taken from my years, because I've worked across the private, public and charity sector. So.
Brilliant. Well, how can people who are listening find out more about you? How can they, you've already mentioned about your cost of living, the new show. What about the the Glasgow Da podcast or social media, how can people find you?
Yeah, so Stuart Mitchell Comedy on TikTok. TikTok's the biggest platform for me. You'll find everything in Glasgow Da on TikTok as well. And they've got links through to everything we're doing in terms of live shows, etc. So just Google Stuart Mitchell Comedy and you'll find me some way.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for that. Really enjoyed that conversation. Could probably sit here for another couple of hours and chat, but I think we're going to get chucked out of this fancy room very soon. Stuart, thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.